was about to have my second kid, or I just had Mikey. And adding that extra person was overwhelming to me. I'm like, how am I going to keep this all straight? Running the household, running the business, taking care of now two human beings. It was a lot. So my husband wanted to know, what should he get me for Christmas? I'm like, you know what I need? I need some decluttering of all that's going on up here so I can operate more efficiently. I need some organization. So Gail and I spent 6 months together, and I highly recommend. I know some of you here have worked with her. Highly recommend her. She's fantastic. It's why we've kept her on hand for our community and everything. So thank you all for joining us here on Zoom, live in the Facebook group, or even the recording. So Gail, I will let you take over. And tonight is your night.
Wonderful.
And I cannot wait.
Wonderful.
I'm sure this will be very interactive. And as you said, intimate. We're going deep, ladies.
Yes, we are. And it's so good to see you. I do see some familiar faces. I see Lynette. Hello, Lynette. I see Chris. So, and it's nice to meet you all tonight. I couldn't be more excited to share this with you. So I'm going to go through a deck, but like as Jessica said, it is going to be interactive. It is going to be, this is really an opportunity to be practical, because I am highly pragmatic. I am definitely woo-woo, but I'm also pragmatic. And the woo-woo, just recently I created a glitter bowl for my desk, okay, that I stir up when I feel like I need, that power. Because I love glitter and it inspires me. So I'm all for woo-woo, but I'm really, I love things that are practical, that are simple, that are smart, and can really spur change. So without further ado, I'm going to start the presentation, and I want to make sure at any point you can interrupt me, you can raise your hand, you can just ask a question. Okay, let's make this really informal, and here we go. All right. Can everybody see my screen? Just nod your head. Wonderful. All right. So this workshop is all about how to break a bad habit and move on with your life. I'm just going to adjust my screen here. Okay. So you may be asking yourself, who is this for? Well, first of all, it's for anyone who's awesome, which is all of you. We already know that. And it's for you if you can't overcome a bad habit and feel like you have tried everything, or you believe you can't change a bad habit because you lack motivation or self-discipline, or you excel, you crush bad habits, but you just love hanging out with Jessica's tribe. Okay, so, right. So raise your hand if if number one resonates the most with you, just wave to me. Okay. Number two, wave to me, and number three, wave. Okay, so we have a nice little combination here. So just a little bit about me. I am a life and leadership coach. I have been coaching since 2015. I have worked with educators, guidance counselors, entrepreneurs, business professionals, and I've been a keynote speaker. I've done workshops for over 100 people. And I do a lot of one-on-one coaching. And really how I sum up what I offer my clients is really, I'm a change agent, and I'm here to support you to make the change that you've been wanting to make. My clients are high functioning. They know how to get things done, but they may be experiencing a little struggle in a specific way that they feel they could use some extra support, accountability, inspiration, and that's what I offer. So I love what I do, and I live in Randolph. I have 2 teenagers. I've been married for over 22 years to the love of my life, and I, in my free time, I hike with my dog. I do hot yoga, and I avoid laundry. Okay, so that's a little bit about me. There you go. So I'm just going to share that this is truly how it all began for me. Once upon a time, I believed I had to do it all in order to be the best, ... And it changed on any given day. Mom, wife, professional, sibling, friend, daughter, volunteer. Okay. I was in this zone of feeling like I had to. I was shooting all over myself. I should do this. I have to. I need to. And I was driving myself crazy. I was overextended. I was overwhelmed. And I looked and felt a lot like this picture. And I've shared with many people in the past that my defining moment was when I was screaming at my kids in my driveway to get them in the car. And the UPS man around the corner overheard me. And I was really mortified. And it was that moment where I realized, wow, something needs to change here. Okay. I don't feel like I'm my authentic self. I was like, when did I become this person? And really, the question that I started to contemplate was, how do I get to less when everything feels equally important? And I did a lot of research. I reached outside of myself. I read books, I asked people, friends and colleagues, and I was like, what are you doing? And I really found out that everybody was really struggling. My story was not unique, but I was so determined to feel and function better that I took it upon myself to quote unquote figure it out. And quite unexpectedly, after I grabbed some simple home office supplies and started kind of playing around with what I was doing and what I wasn't doing, created something I now call dashboarding. And I've been teaching it for many, many years. And in a nutshell, it's really a mental cleanse. Okay. It's a sequence of very specific habits to help you, take action on what matters most to you, not everything. So it's really about prioritizing, getting intentional, and getting to less. Okay. That's really, sometimes people are like, getting to less. Wait, what do you mean getting to less? It's really about getting to what is essential. Because once you start to distill and cull and focus on what is truly essential, everything else becomes easier. All these things that were once hard become like goal setting, time management, prioritizing, productivity. It becomes a lot easier, and you start to get into a flow and you get into a rhythm. And for me, it was such a catalyst. And almost immediately, three things became easier: getting the right things done, feeling confident, and truly feeling more like myself. Okay. So as this started to happen, I started to experience the power of space. You might ask, space. What kind of space? Well, head space, heart space, emotional space, as I started to feel more in control. And I felt like my life was integrated. And I started really focusing on what was essential and started to ignore the rest. That's why I have the image of the road. I started to, really figure out what my North Star was, what my compass. And it made things just so much easier. And I just started to feel more creative, more energized, more present, and more motivated. And so when this started to happen, and I got the taste of like feeling like I was less stressed and working with greater intention, and really hooked into a simple but powerful framework, I was like, what else can I explore? Because this feels good. And, this is what I figured out, but there's a lot more out there. What else can I tap into? And I started to think about habits. And I'm sure all of us have thought about habits. Maybe you've read about habits, practiced different things. And I ended up, I wanted to go deeper on habits. And I love this quote by Gilbert Parker: "There is no influence like the influence of a habit." And I just wanted to invite, since this is interactive, anyone that wants to unmute themselves and just share with us what that quote means to you. Don't be shy, or I might call on you. All right, I'm going to call on someone. No, who's going to share?
I would say the influence of when the habit's on autopilot. and you don't even realize you're doing, whether good or bad, and how it
Yes.
just takes over your life, living, breathing it, and not even thinking twice about it.
Right. Exactly. Anyone else?
I'm reminded of how our pets can train us, and then we develop habits out of like reaction. It's different. It's the same with humans too. When somebody has a behavior that we respond to, it's just such an easy place to develop a habit without realizing it. And yeah, and it's not that they mean to manipulate us, but I'm such a willing player in a situation like that.
Exactly. And you mentioned pets, but I'm also thinking of children.
Yes, that's why I was trying to be nice and say humans too, include the non-parents in the conversation.
I'm going to get more specific and more real, those teenagers. Okay. Yeah. Love it, Chris. Anyone else want to share what this quote means to them? Well, we've really talked about how it can just, if we're not conscious, it's like a runaway train. Okay. So the game changer, as I was looking into this and deeper, was B.J. Fogg, a social scientist, a Stanford professor, and the author of The Tiny Habits, the small changes that change everything. And this book blew my mind. And he's really, in a nutshell, he just believes that tiny is fast. Tiny can start right now. Tiny is safe. Tiny can grow big. And tiny, best of all, doesn't rely on willpower. It's really, really transformative. So I'm curious, for those of you that are with us today, who here is familiar with tiny habits? And if so, unmute yourself, share, if you want to share what you've experienced.
For me, it was with a running app. I'd always wanted to run a 5K and I couldn't even run around the block. So my son challenged me to run a marathon with him, which I didn't do. But I did start to train for it. Well,
Anna?
Years ago. No, okay. I have no desire. That won't happen because I'm not interested. That's beyond my pay grade. But having the app really was transformative for me, because what it did is it taught me small incremental steps and not to push myself beyond those little steps. And so it gave me a time frame, and I knew that even though I felt like that day I could run farther than what the lady on the app was telling me to do, I paced myself according to what she told me to do. And by the end of the 6-week period, I was running a 5K in my sleep. And I went beyond that. So it was great.
Oh, wow. That sounds amazing. And it obviously it really does tie into this about the tiny, start small and it can really grow. And then before you know it, you're in flow. Mm-hmm. So thank you for sharing that, Anna. Anyone else familiar or dabbled in this? If not, we'll just move on. Okay.
I'm not familiar with the story. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you.
I'm not familiar with the book, so I will have to check that out. But on the subject of tiny changes, Jessica, she's been helping me build my retirement because, when I left teaching, I had to put my own retirement plan together, more so than the support I had back then. And I had a hard time contributing from my tiny little paychecks that I was giving myself. And so she's worked with me. So like every month I'd give just a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And it eases me into a much more satisfying contribution.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right. Well, hey, so far I'm giving everyone like an A+ for interaction, and getting real. So thank you so much. It just makes it so much more fun. All right, we'll keep going. So tonight's agenda, as you already know, I'm going to focus on bad habits, and I'll tell you why. I mean, his book and what I'm going to share with you actually works for any habits, bad habits, good habits, just habit formation in general. Like forget the labels, you'll see. But I'm really zooming in on bad habits because bad habits can really take us down, right? So even if we're starting to focus on creating all these changes in our lives, if we have some bad habits that are really systemic, it takes up space. And that's what I was talking about earlier. Like once I started to feel the power of like the head space, the heart space, the emotional space, that dashboarding started to open up, I realized there were other ways to, expand that even further and maintain the space. All right. So we're going to focus on bad habits. We're going to get real. We're going to get inspired. And best of all, we're going to commit to taking action, because I'm all about being practical. So let's start off. Let's dish a little bit. Let's gossip about ourselves. Okay. So here it is. I'm inviting anyone and everyone to be brave, unmute yourself, and share what bad habit you would love to break. And then follow these questions. Why now? How does it make you feel? What have you tried before? And what would change if you were able to break this habit? Oh yeah, let's get real. And I'm about to get real. I'll give my example, but I'd love to hear from all of you. And if you want to put it in the chat, you can. So unmute or throw it in the chat.
I have one.
Great, Mary. Hi.
Hi. I have two. I'm sure I have more, but the two that came to mind, I have a bad habit of picking up the phone when I'm in the middle of something else, or I'm not in the mood, or I will not be able to give that person my full attention, whether it's personal or work related. And it seems to always bite me. I pick up the phone when it's somebody who is angry or dissatisfied, and I'm already like stressed and feel like they're lucky I picked up the phone. Like that's not an attitude I want to enter any conversation with. So I need to resist the temptation when it's not necessary.
Excellent. And what have you tried before?
It's like almost like willpower. If I see the phone ringing,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I don't know who it is. It's just a number. It could be a client. It could be a potential client. It could be or a telemarketer or anyone. But it's kind of like that, FOMO in a way, like, oh, if I let it go, fear of missing out. Or it's like, oh, I'm looking busy. Like, oh, well, it's work hours, so I am obliged to pick up the phone.
Mm-hmm. So Mary, if I may just kind of, what I'm hearing is that what you've been leaning into before to try to manage this really is about willpower. Like trying to resist, trying to be like, oh, I don't need to do this. I do need to do this. Who is that? I need to find out who that is. You've been leaning into willpower. Okay. And it sounds like it hasn't been successful. And then it leaves you feeling how?
Taken advantage of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can feel that, the sigh, right? And so what would change for you if you were able to break the habit of picking up the phone in the middle of something?
I think I would be able to be more focused on whatever I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And better able to help or address whoever or whatever is going on with that call that's coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Time I'll listen to the message, so I'll be more effective in the moment and more effective with that caller.
Love it. Makes sense. You'd be more present. And we know that when we are present, that's when we are most powerful. That's the portal to our power. So thank you, Mary, for sharing that. truly that resonates, I'm sure, with everyone, where we just can't resist. Who else would like to share? Get it out there, speak it, hear it, feel the love coming from everyone.
There's a lot in the chat.
Okay, so let's see. We have overextending myself, work procrastination. So what I would say about tiny habits, and this is a crash course, but it really can be helpful if you can get specific. So if you start to think about work procrastination, what exactly is the habit? Like, are you scrolling the news? Are you, hanging out in your kitchen too long, not heading into your office? Are you doing personal stuff and telling yourself you need to do all that stuff before you do the work? So just drill in a little bit. This is a crash course, obviously. So we see that interrupting my workflow when a teenager comes calling, overextending myself. We see that. I've tried to make my default answer no, but the habit kicks in. Okay. So I just invite you, and you'll see as we go through this, to work on getting really specific, more specific than you'll see, because this is where you start to make it small and then you can get bigger. Okay. But anyone else want to share something that they've tried? Yeah. Oh, here she comes. Hi, Lynette.
Well, right now, my biggest time-consuming habit is playing solitaire on the computer or looking at things on YouTube. And it just seems like it's as hard as I say, well, I'm not going to do that, or I'm going to do something else before I do that, I just cave in. Mm-hmm. And it really is, taking up a lot of my space time-wise so that I don't get other things done.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so thank you for sharing that. I think that is a very universal, habit. And just, to lean into it a little bit more, what kind of feelings come up for you as you, step into this habit?
I think that's I get stressful and anxious about things that I'm supposed to be doing.
Yep.
And this is kind of just an outlet that I can erase it out of my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's numbing, but it causes you anxiety at the same time. You're like, what am I doing? I can't resist. This is not helpful, but man, this feels good.
Yeah.
Right? Makes sense. So, go ahead.
It's kind of a procrastinating about dealing with the normal stresses of life.
Right.
That I'm facing.
Yeah. It's, it's worth pausing here to say, at the end of the day, what is a bad habit? Right? Like, how would we define a bad habit? Anybody want to throw that in the chat? What a bad habit means to you? Or you can unmute yourself. Because, and I'll share, but add on to this. To me, a bad habit is really when the consequences outweigh the benefits. Mm-hmm. So it might serve you in the moment, but ultimately it's really taking you away from something much more fulfilling, important, productive, engaging. And I see in the chat is a bad habit is something I do automatically that delays me reaching my goals. Right. So it's so understandable how we can get caught up in them. And when we, what BJ Fogg really talks about is that we really start to think it has something to do with us, like a failing on our part, our character, our discipline. And you'll see as we move into, the magic of tiny habits, that it's much more than that. And we don't have to blame ourselves anymore. We can move into, a different gear. Lynette, thank you for sharing that so much. Benefits everyone. Okay, anyone else before I move on? Okay, here we go. So I'm going to share with you my little secret because I went through the same exact kind of like contemplation. So my entire life, I have picked my nails. It's really embarrassing to even say it out loud. But ever since I was young, I would peel them so that they would hurt, they would bleed. And I always walked around with my hands in fists. And even if I held up a glass, I'd like fold my fingers. And it was, something I tried to break over and over again. And I will tell you that I have an identical twin sister and we have the exact same habit. So I even had like someone to talk to. We went into the why. We went so deep into the why, okay, the abyss. And it still didn't help. I really, really felt like I and my sister, we had tried everything and I reached a point, right? But I will say that as my business started to unfold and I started to do more presentations and public speaking, I started to, the question of like, why now did I really want to break this habit? Why was it coming back? Is because I wanted to feel more professional, right? And ultimately, how I was feeling was everything you see on the screen. I was filled with shame, embarrassment, guilt, anxiety, and truly self-loathing. Like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I stop doing this? This is so awful. And again, that takes up so much head space and heart space and emotional space. And it was keeping me from so many things. It was just such a distraction. And like I said, I tried everything. And I started to think, as I was moving into this space of a lot of presentations, what would change for me? And I knew that I would feel more peaceful, joyful, confident, proud, and accomplished. So that's, my exercise. And as I went through this, I knew what the shift was going to be, but I just couldn't do it until I curled up to the Fogg Behavioral Model. Dun, 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 dun. And I'm going to teach this to you right now. And you're going to get a chance to kind of deconstruct whatever bad habit you either shared with me or you jotted down, or you might think of a new one as we go through this. But we're going to get a chance to get real. And I'm going to share with you how I applied this specifically. So here's how the Fogg Behavior Model works. It's all about, let me get on the screen again. Behavior happens when motivation, ability, and a prompt all converge at the same time. So this is the model that applies to all behaviors, quote unquote, good behaviors, bad behaviors. Now, the explanation, here we go. All right, let me just close out the chat so I can really focus at this juncture. So here's the explanation of this model. It's gonna take about 2 minutes. So you can visualize this model in 2 dimensions. Along the vertical axis is the level of motivation for a behavior. And it can range anywhere from high to low. So you can see that on your screen. And along the horizontal axis is the ability to do a behavior. And it's also a continuum. On the right is high ability, labeled easy to do. And on the left side of the axis are behaviors that are hard to do. So let's just suppose you want to stop scrolling in bed. Okay? Something probably we can all relate to. If you have a high motivation to do the behavior and it's easy for you to do, guess what? you will be here in the upper right corner of the model. Where you get prompted, you will really do the behavior here. And in contrast, if you have low motivation to scroll in bed and it's hard to do, you will be in the left, the lower left corner. So when you are prompted, you will not do the behavior. So here's the thing. There's a relationship between motivation and ability. And this curved line called the action line shows that relationship. So if someone is anywhere above the action line, when prompted, they will do the behavior. And in this case, they will scroll in bed. However, if they are below the action line, they won't do the behavior. So if someone is above the action line, we need to get them below it for the prompt to stop the behavior. And either we need a decrease in motivation or the behavior needs to be more difficult, or both. Okay, so we're just going to pause for a second. I'm going to get right into a real example here and then share, how this transformed everything for me. And honestly, if it could do this for me, I feel like, wow, it can, this is magic. So again, it's a relationship between motivation and ability. And if we think about scrolling in bed, let's say you are in bed and your phone's right next to you and the alarm goes off and you reach for your phone, the alarm is really the prompt. You reach for the phone because it's right there and you love scrolling because, it's fun. So that behavior is going to be way up there in the right corner. So we need to figure it out. We need to play around, with motivation or ability. So maybe you take the phone out of your room. So when the prompt happens, it's not easy for you to grab your phone. Okay, you get the idea of this so far? This is a model. Okay. Any questions before I go into some of the detail?
Basically, make the bad habit difficult to do.
Right. Make the habit. Yes. In this case, bad habit. You're going to either, play around with your motivation or play around with your ability. And I'm going to really show you, and you're going to get a chance. Even though this is a quote unquote simple model, it does take time to really think through. And I hope my example will really show that to you and spark some ideas so you can create some movement. So this really comes down to, why does this model matter? Honestly, it comes down to this. Once we understand how behavior works, and BJ Fogg, he has cracked the code. I mean, his book goes into so much detail. He is really geeked out on it. Okay, you can even get trained as a coach. I'm giving you some of the best here, so you don't have to read all of it. But once you understand how behavior works, you can analyze why a behavior happens, which really means we can stop blaming our behavior on the wrong things, like our character or our self-discipline. Okay, so let's explore our bad habit using this model. You guys ready? Grab a piece of paper. I am going to ask you to first jot things down. I'm going to give you a minute, and then you're welcome to share or even write it in the chat. Okay, so here we go. Step 1, write down the habit you'd like to stop. Right now, what's top of mind? Don't overthink it, and try to be specific. For instance, write, stop buying soda for lunch rather than stop drinking soda. See the difference in that? We're focused on something small, much smaller. For lunch, tiny is powerful. Tiny we can do right now. All right, so we're going to come up with the behavior. And just to also clarify, behavior, once we do it over and over again, becomes a habit, right? So that's why this is B equals MAP, right? It's really a matter of the behavior that we want to focus on, not necessarily the big overarching habit. All right, so let's see. Does anybody want to share or throw it in the chat? I'd really love it if we all just took a chance. You can jot it in the chat. I won't read who said what if you'd like, or, there's what. Chris?
I would like to stop procrastinating, practicing my guitar. I keep feeling like I've got more work I have to do. I have more, just other people's needs that I put above my music.
Okay, great.
Stop procrastinating. Stop finding excuses.
To practice your guitar.
Yeah, so it's less of a stop and more of a start.
Okay.
Habit.
Okay.
That's honestly the most important one I came up with.
Great. And this model does work for that.
Okay.
These examples are really lasering in on stopping, just because I decided,
right.
Hey,
right.
what I said earlier. All right. So we've got Anna shared a universal one, stop playing games on my phone while watching TV, right? That's such a slippery slope. You have this rule, and then before you know it, you're breaking the same rule that you made for everyone else in the household. Okay, who else? Jessica, any bad habit right now that you would love to?
I was starting with them out like this is a paragraph. The two I keep thinking of are when my husband calls and I'm in a work project or a workflow and stopping, and then I'm not giving him attention. I'm just frustrated during the entire time. And the other one is yelling at the kids right before a drop off or pickup, like those anxious times.
Mm-hmm.
I always feel horrible after.
Okay. And so that feels like a habit to you where it's consistent, happening all the time at drop off and pick up?
Yeah, during those.
And it's unconscious, kind of, on some level, or conscious.
Mm-hmm.
Consciously unconscious.
Probably both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Totally get it. All right. Anyone else? Silence. Okay. Right,
this is mind blowing, by the way. So
I'm so glad. I found it to be mind blowing, and I'm giving everyone a crash course because I got so much out of this alone, and I'm excited to help others. Okay. Oh, thank you. We got another one in. Mary arriving just barely on time. Mary, that's mine too. But it's not that's me, I should say. I always get there like right on time. I'm like, wouldn't it be great if I just showed up with a little flexibility? But no, I'm like so punctual to the hour, but it does work for me. So I don't view it necessarily as a habit I want to break just right now, but that really does resonate with me. Okay, so here's step 2. On the same piece of paper, think of ways you might remove or avoid the prompt. If you can't think of anything, that's okay. You can skip it. But I gave you, we kind of reviewed an example, and I'll give you another one. But the example of scrolling in bed was the alarm clock. Alarm clock, reach for the phone, turn it off, start scrolling. Okay. Another example that, if we want to talk about, starting a behavior, BJ Fogg gives a great example about how he donated to the Red Cross because it was really easy to do. He got a text message on his phone with a link, and he could do it right away. And so the prompt was the text message. He was highly motivated to do it, and it happened to be really easy. So he did it. It wasn't like he got a letter in the mail, saying, here's what you need to do, write the check, here you go. So, and I'm going to really share with you my prompt too, which at first I didn't think I had like a really broad prompt. I was like, stress is my prompt. And then I went deeper, right? Who resonates with that? Where you're like, of course it's stress, right? We want to get tiny. Okay. Does anyone want to share like what they think their prompt might be?
I'm thinking in my case, I need to add a prompt for the
Right, 'cause you
start habit.
Yes.
So I need the other side of that coin.
Yes. And he refers to that as an anchor moment.
Yeah.
Where you think of something that's existing, a routine, or, you know, something that's existing, that's the anchor
Yes.
moment.
Yes,
Then you
that's-
add the tiny behavior and then
Yeah.
you celebrate, right?
Yeah.
That's the true anatomy of tiny habits.
Right.
So
right.
I love that. That's great. Like to start to pause and go, all right, if I want to start this habit of practicing my guitar, where is the opportunity?
I approach it as a form of self-care because it's something I've always wanted to do. So if I tag that onto an actual lunch break, that would be adding 2 new things. So maybe a smaller bite would be my evening shower. I'm nice and relaxed. And that could be kind of like a bedtime story would be for a child. Maybe that's where I need to add that because I like my nighttime shower.
Totally. And Chris, you know, when we really get into this and we talk about tiny, it could be just at level 1 is putting the guitar in your bedroom or in your bathroom. Full stop. That, you know, anchor is a shower, guitar is now in there.
I'll hook on my wall because it's pretty. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you get into the habit.
Yeah. Yeah.
You say hello to the guitar. I'm so glad you're here. And then you build on that. Yep. You pick up the guitar. You know, you get what I'm saying. So thank you for sharing.
I think I have a better bedtime routine right now.
You have a better one?
Yeah, because I'll add that to it.
Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, I thought you were saying I actually have something better, and that's why it's harder.
No. That makes it better. Thank you.
Okay, I was very curious for a moment. Okay, all good. Anyone else? What's coming up for you when you think about the prompt for your habit? Okay, we'll keep going. Step 3 for your habit. Brainstorm ways that might make it harder for you to do it. Whether it's playing games while you're watching TV, yelling at the kids, perhaps at pickup, drop off, arriving right on time, barely on time. And then, you know, really write it down. Write it down on your paper. You're just brainstorming. Okay, literally just come up with ideas. See if you can come up with 2 ideas. Maybe 3. And if anybody wants to share, give you a minute, but unmute yourself. What's coming up for you? How could you make it harder to do?
I am all about lists. I know you know about lists, Gail.
Yes, I do.
But a pretty post-it in the middle of my bathroom mirror where it's in the way to remind me to do or not to do or to encourage me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm a great guitar player, or I'm always on time or early, or you know what I mean?
Right.
Just like,
yep. Beautiful.
Well, I was thinking about the cell phone and the scrolling in the morning. If you had your cell phone in another room and then you just used an old-fashioned alarm clock.
Right.
Yeah.
And this goes into how important is it to you, right? To do this, to break this habit.
Mm-hmm.
And if it is, if your motivation, you know, if you can play around with that, can really change. Thank you, Anna, for sharing. So as you see, it's easier to apply this once we get really specific, but there's still, power in pausing and trying to deconstruct what's happening. Okay, we'll move on to step 4 because I want to be mindful of the time. For your habit, think of ways to reduce your motivation. How can you reduce your motivation to do it in the first place? I mean, scrolling on your phone feels good. You love seeing what's on there. What are your ways to reduce that urge? Write it down. You can share your ideas. 7:50, man, time flies when we're having fun. All right. On the spirit of time, I'm going to go to step 5. So step 5 is for your habit. Select your best solution for steps 2, 3, and 4. So you're really just going to look through your list, and you can circle back to this later. I will share a handout for everyone, so you can curl up to this later and really give it some more thought. But the goal is you've brainstormed, and now you're going to choose. All right, so I'm going to share my true story, my truly true story here on how I applied this to stopping picking my nails. And then I have like a disclaimer under here too. Here we go. Are you guys ready? I mean, I would be on the edge of my seat because this was a habit of over, at the time, I'm almost 52. I would say it was almost 47 years of, knocking it out of the park. Okay. All right. So here we go. Prompt. All right. Let me be very, I had to think about, avoiding stress. I thought, what is my prompt? And how could I remove the prompt? So I was like, all right, is stress my prompt? Do I avoid stress? And then I realized, I wasn't doing it every time I was stressed. I really wasn't. But I started there. I'm like, okay, that's what I need to do. I need to manage my stress. And then I was like, all right, what else could I do? Maybe I count to 10 when I have the urge. Okay. And then I started thinking more. I'm like, well, maybe I stop looking at my nails. Okay. So I brainstormed for ways to avoid the prompt by thinking about, what was causing it. And then I started to think about, well, how could I make this behavior, picking my nails, harder? I could wear gloves. Maybe I don't bring my hands together, or I could put on a really hard, clear nail polish. Okay, I allowed myself to just brainstorm. And then how could I reduce my motivation to do it? Because it felt so good. Maybe I think about treating myself to a manicure. Maybe I find an accountability partner to help me feel strong. Maybe I say morning mantras. I've got the most incredible nails ever. All right, so my solution. So I did just what I, invited you all to do, is brainstorm, and then I started looking very closely. And now I'm going to share Gail's miracle. I call it a miracle. This is what it looks like. To stop picking my nails, I realized that the actual prompt was looking at my nails. Literally, if I look at my nails and I scan them and I see that there's an opportunity, very hard to resist. I'm already triggered. And then the ability piece, I realized, it becomes next to impossible for me to do it if I don't bring my hands together, right? If I just become aware that as soon as my hands come together, nope, not putting my hands together. I'm going to stir my glitter jar instead. Stir it up. Okay, I didn't have my glitter jar back then, but you get the idea. And then the motivation, was how do I reduce my motivation to do it, is treating myself to manicures. Okay, and I experienced utter transformation. It was so powerful. I couldn't believe it. And I wanted to share it with every single person I know. Now, here's the footnote. The footnote is this. This began before the pandemic, and I was feeling the power. When the pandemic hit, my motivation really went out the window. I was in person. I was inside my house all the time, and I slipped. Okay, I did. But then after, a while, I regrouped and did this again. And I'm happy to say, although I don't have a beautiful manicure, I am, in it to win it again. And I feel confident. I feel at peace. I'm not distracted by it. And it feels like a miracle. Okay. So we're near the end of this. Are there any reflections? What's your biggest takeaway? Who here is inspired to tackle their bad habit? Maybe spend some more time reflecting or take one action starting tomorrow on it.
The awareness, I think this is going to bring. Like thinking of, the why.
The awareness. Yep. Mm-hmm. What's happening? When is it happening?
Mm-hmm. Huge.
Okay.
I tend to come from, I'm growing in my compassion, my self-compassion. So I'm going to talk to myself like I would my daughter or my best friend and just say, you deserve time to make your music. Go take your me time. Mm-hmm. And there will be a Post-it on the mirror when we get off, because my daughter and I are roommates currently for a month. We're living in a dorm room in Chicago, and she will hold me accountable because she is so good about self-care and reading me when I need some self-care.
Really? That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's great. So that's like an accountability partner.
Yes.
Yeah. So somebody put, Mary put in the chat, motivation. It's motivation is buried so deep. So Mary, can you expand on that a little bit when you say motivation buried deep?
Like whatever I guess maybe I'm getting the vocabulary wrong, but what prompted my habit in the first place? And I know that when I arrived just in time, I've thought about this before. There's something about being too early and waiting for other people that is very uncomfortable. So I've identified that as a thing, but
you know what I almost wonder, Mary, just as I'm thinking and hearing you, I wonder if it's like, talk about getting small. I wonder if you just focused first and foremost on getting out the door, getting in the car.
Oh, not.
Do you know what I'm saying?
What I'm doing. Yeah.
Right. Like not go all the way to the finish line, but keep it, pull it in, rein it in. You're building this habit or stopping this habit of arriving, just in the nick of time. Maybe you deconstruct what's happening as you lead up to going out the door and start to change something small there. Just an idea. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Good idea.
Anyone else? Okay, great. It's 2 minutes to the hour. Does anyone else speak now, or I will wrap it up on time? Okay. All right. So, guys, you are such a fun audience, so interactive. And I just will wrap this up with an invitation. If you feel ready to make a change, whether it's how you are approaching your organization, how you are integrating all the moving parts of your life, how you are going about creating the head space, the heart space, the emotional space, I'd love to chat with you and learn more. So you can text me, you can email me. I'll get you on my calendar. I have glitter on there for a reason, because of my glitter. And that's it, guys. So to a mind that is still, the universe surrenders.
I will say the creative flow, you touched on this earlier too, Gail, after our first session, and you had me start brain dumping everything. reorganize. And I went to, and I've still told you this before, I went to the car dealership. I had to get an oil change, and I'm sitting there and I have my list of things to do, and I'm going through them like, I already created this, but I had forgotten I had created all these different things that I could just pull together. And it was probably for the book or something. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't need to recreate all this. We forget what we have, and that creative flow, it just started pouring out of me again. So,
yes.
huge.
Out of sight, out of mind. Right? Like when it's actually already came out of your mind, and it's there.
Yes.
I hope you don't mind an embarrassing endorsement. Hopefully not embarrassing, but Gail, she is just, she comes across extremely organized and extremely intelligent, but her heart is just as big as her intelligence. And I just wanted to say, if somebody comes to your mind who's not in this conversation, she's a safe place to refer your loved ones. She took really excellent care of my teenager with her ADHD and just helping her manage some of the executive functioning challenges. And I learned from that process too, so much that I took some of Gail's courses. And so I just wanted to say that, like, I get no benefit from this endorsement. This is just authentic.
Thank you, Chris.
Testimonial for you. But
thank you.
She's good people.
Thank
and
you,
what
Chris.
You say, and what happens with Gail stays with Gail.
Yes. Totally.
That matters. Yeah.
It does. And I will share that if anyone is interested, my real sweet spot is one-on-one. And I have a 6-week dashboarding road trip that will not only share with you the dashboarding framework in a very digestible but comprehensive way, but we will also have room and space for, going deeper with habits, going deeper with, having difficult conversations and creating some flow there. Because as you create space, right, from just a task management standpoint, you start to become really ready and able to step into more. And the journey continues. So thank you guys so much. It was great to see everyone. And happy Tuesday night.
I know. Thank you so much, Gail. This was fantastic. Very different too from what you talked about in the past.
Yeah.
Give me the name of that book again, please, Gail.
Yes. Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg.
Tiny Habits.
And I will share, I've already started working on my next one, Jessica. It's going to be about boundaries.
Oh, we hit on that tonight too.
Yeah.
I was torn. I have to say,
bring it in, baby.
Boundaries, tiny habits, but I was like, there'll be space, and we'll move in. But that's I already know what I'm doing.
Complement each other very well.
All right.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you. Everybody have a great
ladies.
night. Reach out to Gail. Thank you so much, Gail. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, those who are watching the recording or live in the Facebook group. All right. Have a good night.